Hi guys, good morning. Welcome to Quality Thought Solutions. My name is Varun. About me, I'll be the lead facilitator of this workshop. Coming to my profile, I have around 13 years of work experience. I started as a developer and later moved into a business analyst. And currently, I work as a product manager with a healthcare firm. That is about me. Welcome to this workshop. In this workshop is ideal for people who are looking forward to move into a role of a business analyst. Throughout these 3 days, what we will be covering is we'll be covering what a business analyst basically does. Okay, what are the various in today's session particularly, we'll be looking at from the basics of who a business analyst is, what is the definition of a BA, what are the kind of job opportunities, what are the various areas where a business analyst is involved, okay, and what is the skill set needed for the role. And we will briefly talk about the roles and responsibilities of a BA in a software project, right? And as we go tomorrow and day after tomorrow, we'll try to take up one small project, and I'll try to explain you from a standpoint of a business analyst what are the various things which a BA does. So from my side, I've given my introduction. So a lot of people, first thing I want to make a small correction. This is a business analyst workshop and not analytics, right? There are two different things. I'll start with this only because a lot of people were emphasizing on analytics. Analytics is a completely different sector, okay, where analytics involves taking data driven decisions. Analytics is more of a role where you're going to look at data, you're going to streamline that data, and you're going to visually represent that data. That is what business analytics is all about. Here this role is a business analyst. Okay, there is a wide difference between an analyst and analytics, so please don't get confused. Our workshop here is completely focused on business analysis and business analyst. So coming to a lot of questions were asked, so I will start with the basics, and the first 15 to 20 minutes, right, I will cover in terms of who is eligible for this role, what are the types of activities which a BA does. Before we move to that, first definition of who a business analyst is. Okay, who's a business analyst, what is the role he does in a software project. We are completely talking about BAs in software projects here because the primary goal of our workshop is also to train people so that they can move into the software industry, right? So the primary definition of a BA, a business analyst, is a person who acts as an intermediate or a bridge between the client and the development team or offshore team. To simplify this, right, a lot of people, some people could be from the IT background, so they can understand these terminologies. Some people, as you said, are freshers. Just for me to simplify this thing, so there are basically three kinds of, before I expand these things, okay, you have seen the term called client and development team. Okay, so who a client is somebody who is going to give you a who's going to offer you a project. He is referred, ideally he is the one who is referred to as a client, right? So client is anyone who is going to go ahead and who is going to give you business. That is what a client is. Development team is a team which is from your side, the team which is going to go ahead and develop that particular project. This is what a development team constitutes, right? So who a BA is, a business analyst is basically a person in a team who's responsible for gathering the requirement from the client and transforming that requirement into business and functional requirements. So this is what a BA is. At a high level, the definition of a business analyst is, a business analyst is a person who acts as an intermediate between the client and the development company, right? So let us talk about why this role came into existence. Okay, so 15-20 years we are talking about. Before we move into again why this came into existence, we also need to understand the software companies and what are types of software companies. So basically, there are two types of software companies, guys. Anywhere, if you're gonna see, there will be two types of software companies. One is the product-based company. Second thing is a service-based company. So by the term of product-based company itself, product-based companies are companies which make their own products or solutions, right? So they build their own product and they sell that product to client. That is what is the definition of product-based companies. They build their own product and sell the product to the customers. So examples of product-based companies are Dell, Google, Facebook, Microsoft. These are the examples of product-based companies. The second type of company is a service-based company. What is a service-based company? Is companies which offer service to the clients. Okay. So what they do, they ideally will build whatever is required for the client. And the examples of service-based companies are TCS, Infosys, Wipro, Cognizant, Accenture, and so on. So now that we have explained who a BA is and the type of companies are, let's talk about. Okay, this somebody has asked. Okay, NBFC is again non-banking financial institution that again comes under the domain. Okay, so NBFCs again they come under domains. We'll come to that also. So we'll come to that part also. Now that we have covered the part of the type of companies we have, now what we are going to actually look at here is a lot of people ask me questions. Who is this role meant for? Before we go there, how BA as a role came into existence. So, in traditionally, what used to happen, we are talking about, let's say, way back in 2010, 2008, 2009, that time, right? We are talking about a decade ago, 10 years ago. What used to happen is basically in your project, you usually have project managers. So, these people and developers used to play the role of a BA. So, what they used to do is they used to interact with the client on a day to day basis and they used to gather the requirement from the client and they used to give that to their team and get the software developed. This is what was happening in the earlier days. Okay, and what happened by doing that, basically there were major issues in terms of from a project manager standpoint, right? There's a lot of bandwidth issue there. When I say bandwidth, he handles multiple projects. So doing the part of this thing also, that is gathering the requirement, explaining to the team and also handling the project, it becomes a little difficult for them. That is why slowly what happened is initial days, okay, who used to do the role of the BS, majorly it were developers used to play the BA role. Then what happened, slowly testers used to move into this, QA people used to move into this role as a BA. Why they used to do is, most of the times if you look in companies, right, the QA resource is somebody who is going to be testing the application on a day to day basis, so they also have a interaction with the client. So there what happened in the initial days, these QAs used to take up the role of a business analyst. And later as things evolved, this entire role, this role itself became one prominent role in itself, because as a business analyst there's a lot of interaction with the client, there is a lot of traveling also. Sometimes you will have to go to the client location, you will have to interact with them. So because of that they created a separate role, and today this is referred to as a completely different role. Okay, so coming to this, what are the skill sets needed? And a lot of people asked me what is the background you need to go into a BA role. So we will talk about that, what the skill sets are, and then we will move into the entire topic of what exactly a BA does, what are the roles and responsibilities of the BA, and we'll also talk about various domains where business analysts work on. Okay, coming to the skill sets required for a BA, so there are three primarily skills which are needed. The first is effective communication skills, because this role is something which will involve a everyday interaction with the client. Day to day interaction is going to be with the client, so because of that it needs effective communication skills, right? So you need to be someone who's confident enough to communicate with the client, gathering the requirement, writing down the requirement. That this is the first skill set which is needed. Second thing, strong analytical skills. When I say analytical skills, you should be able to analyze a lot of things. Whenever you're coming up with a solution or whenever you're gathering a requirement, you should have the ability to analyze a lot of things and come up with some solutions. And the third most effective skills is good documentation and presentation skills. From a soft skill standpoint, these are the three things which are needed. From a technical standpoint, right? Working knowledge of SQL and tools like Jira are good enough. We will cover all these things. Okay, we will not cover SQL in depth, but we'll talk about what Jira is and all those as we move in. Maybe tomorrow, day after tomorrow in our workshop, we will cover those parts. But for now, these are the three skill sets which are needed, right? So, from an education standpoint, there is no hard and fast rule that only a certain education background can give you. But usually, if you are somebody from a BTech background, I'm not saying you need to be. If you are from a BTech or a MBA background, it becomes easier for you to move into this role. And if you're already working in the industry, some people said they are a QA. Transition, to be very honest, transition from a QA to BA is very easy. To BA is very easy. All you need to acquire is the skill sets which are needed for you to move into the BA role. That is all you need. Okay. So from a soft skill standpoint, these are the three skill sets which are needed. And from a technical standpoint, because you will be working, you might be looking at data and everything. Good working knowledge of SQL is mandatory. I would say mandatory. I wouldn't say good. Uh, it is needed, but it is mandatory to know SQL, because in some projects where you'll be working on the back end, you might have to look at data. So from that standpoint, working knowledge of SQL is mandatory. So now moving on to the roles and before we move on to the roles and responsibilities of a BA, what are the domains? Okay, what are the various domains where BA is needed? Again, guys, domains refer to the basic industry, okay, or the business vertical. So some of the major domains, right, where there is a lot of demand, it is healthcare is a huge domain. Starting with healthcare, the second thing is BFSI, which is banking and financial services, insurance, e-commerce, edtech. So if we are widely looking at job opportunities, right, these are the primarily five domains which you will see. Even if you're going on Naukri or if you're looking at any job sites or on LinkedIn, these are the primary domains where there is a lot of demand, right? So if any of you, there are a lot of people who come from a background, right? So it is, if you are somebody who has a little bit of subject knowledge, if you're already working in any of these domains, all we need to do is we need to transform your existing experience as a business analyst, and it becomes easier for you to move into the role. Because if anybody has worked in the so-called domains, right, you will have a lot of knowledge on that domain. When I say knowledge, basically as a business analyst, what is the thing that you're doing? You're going ahead collecting requirement and you're going ahead and building a software for the client. That is what you're doing. So having knowledge of these domains will actually help you to communicate with the stakeholders and everyone, and understand the industry far better. So from a skill set standpoint, these are a primary skill sets needed, and these are the domains where there is a lot of demand. And today there is, see, if we have to look at BAs, I would look at only two types of BAs. There are functional BAs and technical BAs. So in the industry, you will see and techno functional guys. So just to give you an example, let's say somebody has around 10 years, 12 years of experience in the healthcare domain or any domain, whatever domain it is. So what he automatically becomes is he automatically becomes a subject matter expert. So that person acts as a functional BA. He would not be somebody who is very technically strong, but that person, because of his subject knowledge, he will understand the domain better. So he'll be able to gather the requirement and he'll be able to communicate it with his development team so that they can develop the software. The second thing is a technical BA. A technical BA is somebody who is very strong technically. When I say technically, somebody who can understand backend, somebody who can understand the integration part of a software, somebody who's coming from a technical background. He could have been ex developer or ex tester or ex QS, whoever is from that background. These are technical BAs. These people adapt to the domain. They learn the domain and then they move into the role. And the third kind is a techno functional BAs. They are somebody who has technical knowledge as well as functional knowledge. So ideally, these are the three types of BAs who are existing in the industry. So for people who are wanting to transition, if you have the work experience, it becomes easier. For freshers, you just need to acquire the required skill set. That is, you need to have, as I said, strong communication skills. It all starts with there having very strong communication skills, good analytical skills, and documentation and presentation skills. It starts from here, and then SQL and all that, whatever is needed. If you have that, then you can enter into this industry because you have a lot of scope. Now that a lot of startups are also there is a lot of scope from a job market standpoint. It has opened up, and there is no hard and fast rule which is going to stop you from doing this role. All you need to know is you need to have the skill set required. So having said this, now we will go a little bit deep into what are the various roles and responsibilities of a BA. Okay. So before that, we need to understand in every software company, right? So there is something called a software development life cycle. This is a method which is ideally used for any software to go ahead and to be implemented, right? So in our workshop, we are primarily going to look at two SDLC methodologies. The first one is a widely used methodology which is known as waterfall. The second one is agile. So widely, these are the two things. Initially, the old method which was widely followed was known as waterfall, and today the method which most of the IT companies are running on is known as agile. So we will look at waterfall method for now. So what does waterfall methodology mean and what are the various stages in this waterfall methodology? That is what we will cover in our workshop. So are we good till here, guys? So waterfall method is a sequential method of software development. The software goes through various phases before it is delivered to the client. So let me just put in these phases and then we'll cover each one in detail. So these are the phases in the waterfall methodology, guys. So before we move into these phases, right, from a software standpoint, you need to understand the components of a software, right? So whatever application you're seeing on the internet, let me take an example of Amazon.in. Okay, there are basically two important things. Okay, one what we call as a user interface or GUI, that is the front end. So whatever you're seeing, this is known as front end. And whatever the database is set up, wherever the data is stored, that is the back end. So there are various, databases primarily. Okay, there are two kinds. We use MS SQL or Oracle, and today we have something called AWS also. This is something which is used for the back end part, right? And the front end is usually developed on .NET or Java. You'll see a lot of projects which are made in Java or .NET and various other technologies. So you need to understand that software basically has two things. One is the front end and the back end. Front end is the user interface, and the back end is something which is known as the database, right? So that is what it is. Now moving to the various phases in the waterfall methodology. So what waterfall methodology means is it is a sequential method of software development. As I earlier said, this is a method to go ahead and develop the software, and the software goes through various phases before it is delivered to the client. And also what you need to understand is in a software development team, what does the team compose of? Usually it has a project manager, a business analyst, an architect, developers, and QA, right? So this is the standard composition of a software development team. Okay. In standardly, now that we are talking about a waterfall method, in the waterfall method, the entire team composes of an architect, a project manager, a business analyst, developers, and QA. So this is what a software development team ideally consists of. So now moving to what are the phases in the waterfall methodology. The first thing where how a project comes into the client, this is known as a pre-project phase. So every team has something called a pre-sales team. Okay. So what they do is they go ahead and they contact the clients. Okay. They send their proposals. Basically, lead is generated. Every team has sales and marketing teams where their job is to go ahead and generate leads. After the lead is generated, and once they are getting any interest, right? So what this pre-sales team does is they will go ahead and they'll send a basic portfolio of their company to the given client. Okay. Once the client has shown some interest, what they do is they create a document which is known as request for proposal. Okay. This is how a project comes into the company, guys. So they go ahead and they create a request for proposal and they send the entire proposal to the client. So the client will analyze the proposal, and then if they are happy with the proposal, what they do is they will sign a contract with the company saying that okay, we want this kind of a software to be developed within this time frame. That will be mentioned in the contract, and once the contract is signed, then the project kickoff meeting starts. So this is the first phase of the project, and what basically happens in the project kickoff meeting is the entire team is introduced to the client. Okay. So when I say client is there will be multiple stakeholders from their side also. There'll be a lot of people who will be a part of the client meetings most of the times. So during the project kickoff meeting, what happens is the BA, the PM, usually it will be the leads will be there in the call. Leads and people from the client side will have a formal introduction. So here what basically happens is they will give you a brief introduction of who they are, what they do, what is the expectation from the project. This is a very high level meeting, guys. Okay. This is known as a kickoff meeting where it involves people, the business analyst is a part of the call, the project manager will be there, the development lead, the QA lead, the architect, all these people will be a part of the call and they'll understand what is the expectation from the client. This is what the kickoff meeting is. After the kickoff meeting is where the basics job responsibility of a BA starts, and that phase is known as requirement gathering phase. So this is the first phase where the BA connects with the client and will gather the requirement. Guys, are we clear till here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. So in the requirement gathering phase, what happens is the BA connects with the client and will gather all the requirement. This phase itself can go ahead and take time, okay, based on the availability of the client and based on the requirement how it is gathered. This is the first phase where the BA will go ahead. He will have to understand the entire requirement. He will have to document that requirement and do all sorts of activities. So here again, when we in this phase, there are lots of requirement gathering techniques, which is what we will cover. So the gathering involves when the BA is going ahead and going to gather. Okay, there are a lot of techniques which are actually implemented in the real time. So let's look at. So these are the 5 basic requirement gathering techniques, which is what we'll be covering. Okay, so we'll start with brainstorming. Okay, what it is. So as we said, there are primarily 5 requirement gathering techniques which are used, and we will start with the basics. Okay, what is a requirement gathering technique, how it is used. One of the widely used technique is known as brainstorming, right? So this again is widely used in product based companies. Guys, these are things which you do on a day-to-day basis on a practical way. Okay, if you're in working in product-based companies like Google or Microsoft or Facebook, right? So here you might have heard about something called hackathons which happen. So in major product-based companies, what happens is over Fridays they take the entire day towards building a new product. Okay, so what happens is they form teams and they go ahead and they build. They give a 24-hour or the continuous thing is known as a hackathon. It's very exciting for people working in such product based companies, where here what happens is you use this brainstorming technique. So I'll tell you what brainstorming is. So basically what happens, okay, somebody has put, this is, see, these are basically the what I'm explaining are the various requirement gathering techniques. I spoke about the requirement gathering phase, right? This is the first phase when you're going to go ahead and gather requirement from the client. So how you are gathering that requirement from the client, what are the techniques you use for gathering requirement from the client is what I am explaining here. Yes, this is not information, but this is how you, this is one of the techniques which is used to go ahead and gather requirement. So in brainstorming, what happens is basically, different teams are formed, and what happens is every team has product manager or a product owner, a business analyst. So what happens, you go ahead and discuss various ideas. Let us give an example of, let's say Microsoft wants to come up with another version of a browser. They already have Bing and they want to come up with a newer version of the browser. Okay, this is an example I'm giving you. So what happens is they tell the team that, okay guys, come up with some ideas and come up with some feasible solution where we can go ahead and build a new browser. So that is the case study which is given to the team, and what happens is various teams are formed and they sit together and they brainstorm on ideas. When I say brainstorm, they discuss various ideas in terms of from a functionality standpoint, from a user experience standpoint. There are different people in the team. There are people from a technical background, there are people from the product background. So all these people sit together and they discuss ideas, and whatever the feasible ideas are, those ideas are jotted down and then they are taken to the next phase. This is majorly happens in product based companies, because in product based companies you are going to go ahead and build your own product. That is what happens in this brainstorming technique, this particular technique ideally happens in a product-based companies, and this does not happen in service-based companies, right? So this is what brainstorming is. There is no hard and fast rule how brainstorming has to happen. Basically, people sit and discuss ideas, and they look at the feasibility. Yes, it is from scratch level. Correct. This is from scratch level. Yes, you go ahead and you basically brainstorm from a scratch level, and you go ahead and work on ideas, and you come up with solutions based on those ideas. That is what happens in brainstorming. So the second technique which is used, before we move, I am not going in order, but I'll just come up with things. Another requirement gathering technique which is widely used is known as document analysis. So what happens majorly when you're going ahead and let us say you're building a software for a client, right? So there are high chances that some cases the project is being built from a scratch. In some cases what happens is they already have an existing application, okay? They will have an existing application, then they'll want a new application to be built. In that case, document analysis is a technique where what happens is the client will share you an existing document of that application, okay? Whatever application they have currently, they will give you an entire document which will capture the entire flow of the application, everything about that particular application. This document analysis, right, is a technique which is used where what you do is you analyze the existing document, you understand the flaws, and based on that you will discuss with the client how to improvise that given application. So this is a technique which is ideally used in cases that you are building an enhancement of a given application. When I say enhancement, you are building a newer version of an application. That is where document analysis technique comes into picture, right? So this is one technique which is used widely by the BA to go through a document, to dig dive through the document and to understand the document, and to go ahead and to build, understand the gaps in that particular document and discuss with the client and come up with the newer version. That is what document analysis is all about, right? And the next thing which is again widely used is known as interview sessions. So here what happens is basically you as a BA, you will set up calls with various stakeholders in the project. Is document analysis and preparing FSD the same? No, it is not the same. Document analysis has nothing to do with preparing the functional document. This at the requirement gathering stage, you are just doing an analysis of their existing application. Okay. After the gathering phase is where the documentation parts. I will come to that, but preparing FSD and document analysis is not the same thing. So in interview sessions, what happens is, so basically what you will do in the initial phase, as I said in the project kickoff meeting, you will be introduced to various stakeholders of the project, right? So some people will be technical stakeholders. When I say technical stakeholders, they will understand the technical parts of the project, okay? And some are business stakeholders. Guys, stakeholders are nothing but clients, but there are different types of people who will be involved in a given project, right? So there will be management stakeholders. These people are CEOs, CFOs, who are responsible for the project to continue, for everything. They are the ones who are responsible. You also have technical stakeholders. Technical stakeholders are people who are the technical people who are involved in the project. It could be developers from the client side, it could be architects from the client side, and business stakeholders are the people who are responsible to understand the business process. So what happens during the interview sessions is, there are two types of interview sessions which happen in real time, guys. Sometimes you also visit the client location. Okay, a lot of you might have heard that people BAs are traveling to on-site location. It is also a practical scenario where you actually go ahead, visit their location, have a one-on-one meeting with them to understand their process and everything, right? And the other thing is meetings, online virtual meetings, where you basically what you do here is you will connect with individual stakeholders, you will understand what their requirement is, You will capture all that in a basic draft, and you will then form a bigger draft. So that is what happens in the interview sessions, right? So this is also one of the whatever I am explaining here are the various requirement gathering techniques which I am explaining, right? So are we clear till here, guys? One more tech. Yeah.
The process of requirement gathering, right?
Yes, this is the process of requirement gathering. This is the first phase, and we are covering this. This all things happen phase wise in the waterfall methodology. As I earlier said, whatever we are covering the waterfall methodology, which is used for software development. So, as we were mentioning the various requirement gathering techniques, right? One more technique which is widely used is known as reverse engineering. I'll talk about what reverse engineering is, right? So, in as I said, most of the clients, okay, who are asking you to go ahead and develop a software, they already have an existing application. Most of the times, what happens is they have an existing application and they want some changes to be made to the existing application, or they want a newer application to be made. So, in reverse engineering, what happens is what you do, you basically break down the existing application and you do a, if I have to say, you basically do a postmortem of the existing application, just in layman terms. So what you do is you basically break down the existing application and you try to understand the functional and technical aspects of it. Enhancements of new features, Pallavi, basically what I'm trying to say here is there could be that the client is already having an existing application which they have, okay, and they want newer features to be added. It could be they want newer features to be added, or they want an application to be built from scratch and they want some elements from the previous application to be included. So it completely depends. Okay, it could be enhancement, it could be upgrade, it could be something which has to be built from scratch with having certain functionalities of the existing application. It could be either of the three. Perfect. So this, in reverse engineering, what basically happens is, so you have your technical team also, you will have your developers and everybody. They basically try to understand the technical aspects of the existing application, and you as a BA will try to understand the functional aspects of the application. When I say functional aspect, you basically log in as the user and you understand the entire application flow. So right from login, if it is having a login, what are the various modules which are there in application? Okay, what is the time it is taking for a particular thing to do? So from a QA standpoint, they will understand they will go ahead and test the application, right? The developers will try to understand from where it is fetching data, how it is fetching data, all the technical aspects they will understand. You will understand the flow, and then you will come up with details in terms of what are the challenges, what are the flaws which are there in that application. All that you will put it in a document, and then what you do is you will basically present the same thing to the client, saying that okay, these are my observations, these are what I have understood from the entire thing, this is what my observation is, and you will propose the newer solution based on whatever you have understood. So this is what reverse engineering is, and this is also one of the requirement gathering technique. So this is the first phase. As I said, you go ahead and gather the requirement. Now we will talk about the next phase. After requirement gathering, what happens? It is known as requirement analysis. Okay. So once you have gathered all the requirement, okay, you have to go ahead and you have to filter that requirement, right? See, basic thing what you need to understand is a client time is very limited. Okay, you cannot keep going back to the client very regularly and keep one entire phase after you have gathered the requirement. You sit together, you understand what is important, what is not important, and then you will create the required document what has to be created. Okay, that is what happens at this phase. So in the requirement analysis phase, so what basically happens is you will have to filter the requirement based on the priority, Okay, the time consumed and the budget. You take all these three factors before you go ahead and zero in on the requirements which are going to be priority. And again, for the requirement analysis also, even for requirement analysis, you have various techniques which are used. One of the widely used techniques in requirement analysis is known as the Moscow technique. And this is an interview question also. In reality, whoever is going for a BA interview, in fact, there'll be I think there is somebody who's working as a BA, right? So Moscow is one technique which is an interview question, and is also one of the technique which is widely used. Moscow stands for nothing. It is not any scientific thing. It just stands for, it is an abbreviation of must have, should have, could have. Last thing is won't have. So guys, what Moscow means is you basically use this technique to basically prioritize your requirement. Let us say you have gathered all the requirement in a document. Okay, you have put in what all is needed by the client, and then you will have to give priority. What is priority 1? What is priority 2? What is priority 3? That is, what is the most important things and what are the least important things. Those are the things which you have to gather, right? So from that standpoint, what you do, you use this technique to go ahead and prioritize these requirements. Okay, this is a standard technique which is used. You sit together with your technical team and you understand what are most priority things to have. So when you have written the requirement, when you will first go with the things of what are the must-have things in that particular project. Okay, can we proceed? So basically so this technique is used for you to go ahead and prioritize the requirement. Okay, so Moscow is one of the widely used technique to prioritize requirement. And once you have gone ahead and prioritized the requirement, this is where the documentation part comes in. Okay, so the first document which you create is known as business requirement document, or in our terms we refer to it as BRD. So BRD is the first document which is shared with the client, which contains the entire scope of work, the business requirements, everything needed to start work. Okay, what is this question? I am sharing the screen. Guys, is everybody else able to see my screen?
Yes, sir, yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So this is the first document which is ideally after this analysis technique, right? This is the first set of document which is ideally created by the BA and it is shared with the client, and from here the actual work starts. What is a BRD, how a BRD looks, all that we will cover tomorrow, right? Today I am just giving you a brief overview of what this is. So BRD is the first document which is shared with the client, which contains the entire scope of work. So here the analysis part is done, and after the analysis part, right, then it goes to the design part. Okay, so at the design part, what happens is once you have captured at the design part is where you go ahead and capture the business requirement document, you share it with the client and you wait for feedback with the client. Why you share this business requirement document is you cannot keep going back and forward with the requirement, right? You'll have to freeze the requirement. That is, this is what the scope is, this is what we are going to do, this is what I am freezing the requirement. That is something you'll have to capture very clearly. So that is what the business requirement document does. The BRD document basically goes ahead and captures the entire requirement, right? It will basically capture the entire requirement for basically this will capture the first level and is shared with the client. Then the design phase starts. Okay, that from this business requirement document you will arrive at what are the requirements which have to be developed, and you sit with the UI team. You usually have a UI team who will design the screens and everything. Okay, that is where the design part starts, and after the design part, okay, then is where the development starts. And during development, the developers are given the requirement from the BRD document. You arrive at something called a functional requirement document. Okay, how that functional requirement document is arrived, what are the various things, all those in detail we will cover tomorrow. In terms of, we'll break it down. What are the flow charts? How do you draw flow charts? Take an example of things, and we will cover all those things tomorrow. Right? That is what we will be covering completely tomorrow. And after the development phase, okay, after the development phase there is something which is known as testing. Okay, and then finally it ends with deployment. So development, then it goes through testing, and the last phase is known as deployment. So in the waterfall method, right, as I was explaining, in the waterfall method, this entire thing goes through different phases, and towards the end is where the client will be able to go ahead and see the complete product. This is what waterfall method is all about, right? Okay, guys, thank you so much for your time. We'll again connect tomorrow at 10 and we'll continue our workshop. So, we're gonna have the workshop till day after tomorrow. So, I suggest everybody to attend the entire 3 days so that you understand in depth of what we are going ahead and covering. Yeah.